range, which means we still have work to do.
I also asked Bostic what economic challenges here in Atlanta. It's a shortage of workers. According to him, a key part of that is a lack of affordable housing that's accessible to those workers. In Atlanta, I'm Rob DiRienzo, News.
Association of Business Economics, there is basically a coin flip, a 50% chance or so of us hitting a recession in 2024. Michelle, I know we were having this conversation a lot this time last year with regards to 23, but how do you think investors should best navigate potential volatility, therefore, in the market?
Well, gold is certainly one area, and we can see that silver might be a little bit undervalued at this point too. I think precious metals are really telling you that that could be the safety plays in protection against all types of risk, whether it's geopolitical or monetary or credit risks. And the second thing, really, it's an interesting little area that a lot of people don't really follow. But I'm very interested in what happens with junk bonds. So junk bonds are high yield, high debt bonds that when there's a risk on environment, investors will buy. And even though we've seen a big move from the October lows in the junk bonds relative to what the SPY or the NASDAQ is doing, they're still incredibly low. They've really come out of a base, but they haven't fully broken out yet, which tells me that the bond traders are definitely preparing, especially as the long bonds might start to outperform and have been outperforming, for a delay in the call for recession from 2023 to 2024. So that's kind of, I think, would be the key, is keep your eye on that junk bond situation and the relationship it has to the long bonds. As the long bonds have rallied and yields have come off, they haven't really moved very much, and that's often a warning not only for some kind of capitulation in the market in terms of a correction, but also the potential of some kind of a recessionary factor. Last time we saw junk bonds really in trouble was right before COVID and then during COVID.
Our dedicated team with special guests covering an election cycle unlike any other. First up, the Iowa caucuses.
Iowa has the ability to engineer and jumpstart the comeback of this country.
We have to have a new generational leader.
Other generations stood up and pushed back, and now it's our turn. We fight for the truth.
Join NTD Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer for a historic night.
The biggest election we've ever had is coming up.
Are you with me?
The Nation Decides 2024, the Iowa Caucuses, live January 15th at 8 p.m. on NTD News.
Two different points: the influence on voters, the influence on election officials, and also sort of hardware concerns about how we physically vote, whether on paper ballot, machines, and how those numbers are transferred to be counted. And I think there's a number of points of vulnerability there, and I have a good feeling that election officials are thinking through all of those possible scenarios right about now.
What can states do to get prepared for this?
Well, I think there are federal resources available. There's a cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency that's put up some great information. There's resources available there. I think this is an education game, right? And hopefully they'll also be in touch with each other and sharing best practices. It's not one cohesive plan, right? Every state does this a little differently. They're going to need to come up with plans for themselves. But I think this is the time they should really get educated, get prepared, and learn from the past.
All right, Jessica Maluzhin, thank you so much. Coming up, a government watchdog will look into the communication breakdown surrounding Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization. Hear more about the investigation and see how Republican senators are reacting. And the House strikes down a rule by the Biden administration on EV chargers. Critics say the Biden rule could benefit China. Where will the bill go from here? We'll have the details soon when we return. America First Legal has received new records. The foundation says the records suggest the president's son leveraged his involvement. Hunter Biden allegedly influenced his father's meetings and calendar for his own personal gain.
For example, when then Vice President Biden allegedly agreed to give a keynote speech at an event,
The event was hosted by an organization whose board included his son. Hunter Biden allegedly lobbied his father to have him accept the invitation.
Now, some House Democrats are accusing former President Trump of improperly profiting from his presidency as well. The Trump Organization denied wrongdoing.
Democrats on the House Oversight Committee published a report on Thursday. They assert that Trump's businesses took in at least an estimated $7.8 million from 20 foreign governments during his term in violation of the Constitution.
The outlined payments mostly included spending on rent at the Trump Tower and Trump World Tower, both in New York. They also included stays at the Trump International Hotels in Washington, D.C. and Las Vegas.
The report also alleged that Trump allowed those payments to influence his foreign policy moves. A Trump Organization spokesperson told the Epoch Times, quote, "That narrative is insane."
The spokesperson noted that the Trump Organization can't prevent people from making reservations through third-party booking websites.
And former President Trump is reportedly set to appear in court again in the federal election case against him. The court is probing whether Trump can be prosecuted in the case or not. The election interference trial is scheduled to start in March. However, the court is still dealing with the question whether Trump can even be prosecuted for the allegations against him. Special counsel Jack Smith alleges Trump tried to illegally overturn the 2020 election.
Lawyers for the former president, however, say Trump was still in office at the time and thus enjoys presidential immunity. They also point out that he was not impeached and convicted by Congress.
NBC reports the court is set to hear those arguments on Tuesday, with Trump attending in person.
Former first son Eric Trump was in Iowa yesterday at a MAGA campaign event in support of his dad. The younger Trump emphasized what he sees as the accomplishments of his father's administration. He cited the low employment across racial and gender lines and celebrated what he called the largest tax cuts in U.S. history.
He also said there was peace in the Middle East under former President Trump and that his father fought for health and religious freedom. Eric Trump then got his dad on the phone, seeming to please those in attendance.
Say hi to the entire crowd. Well, I just want to thank everybody for being so loyal, for being so wonderful. And always remember, we got the farmers of Iowa $28 billion. That's a lot of money. And I can't think about Joe Biden doing that. He wouldn't even think about it. So I just want to say I look forward to seeing you on Friday. We love you all, and I hope my son is doing a great job because he always has done a good job.
Has dropped to 63% nationwide, down from
You wonder why.
80% who voted for him 4 years ago.
The truth is, if that election happened today between Trump and Biden, Donald Trump wins.
On the GOP side, the Real Clear Politics average of polls shows the former president leading his GOP rivals by more than 50 points.
Now, when they're mixing every drug on the market with fentanyl, and they're killing the people we love.
Musician Jason DeFord on Thursday urged lawmakers to pass the Fend Off Fentanyl Act. The Senate already passed it last year, but the House did not. The act would declare international fentanyl trafficking a national emergency, require sanctions on transnational criminal organizations, take special measures against fentanyl-related money laundering, and more. Republican Senator Tim Scott at the hearing said we have to follow the money. According to the senator, it's important to pass the Fentanyl Act to impose sanctions on Chinese and Mexican organizations trafficking fentanyl and to use anti-money laundering measures against them.
We have to hit them where it hurts, and that's their wallets. The illicit money engine needs to be turned off, and it needs to be turned off now.
DeFord said the fentanyl crisis is a national emergency, which deserves much more attention than it is getting right now.
190 people a day overdose and die every single day in the United States of America. That is about a 737 plane. That's what about a 737 aircraft can carry. Could you imagine the national media attention it would get if they were reporting that a plane was crashing every single day and killing 190 people?
According to the CDC, there have been over 100,000 overdose deaths in the U.S. in 2022. That's 2% more than in 2021. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
Homeland Security Secretary
next week to hold Hunter in contempt of Congress. Coming up, a challenger to former President Trump arrested on federal tax charges. The long-shot presidential candidate tried getting Trump off multiple state ballots. Self-proclaimed Arian Pasdar has an immigration update.
A few House Democrats say they disagree with President Biden's handling of the immigration crisis. Texas Democrat Vicente Gonzalez told Punchbowl News that we need to enforce immigration laws on the border. We need to start removing people. New Mexico Democrat Gabe Vasquez says the administration has taken too long to take serious action on some important border reforms. And Texas Democrat Henry Cuellar told Forbes he doesn't agree with how Biden's handled the border either.
If I was advising the president, I would have done this. I would have told him, look at the American public, tell them there's an immigration crisis. It's okay to use crisis.
Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio and others are introducing a bill today. It would force Homeland Security to deport individuals if their visa is revoked on security-related grounds. Rubio said in a statement that supporting terrorism disqualifies individuals from having a visa, and we should not allow these individuals to remain in our country based on the whims of this administration. Under current U.S. law, such individuals could stay in the country. Meanwhile, the Texas National Guard is taking over a public park in Eagle Pass. This video from Fox News shows the guardsmen barricading the location. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, commenting on the video, says, "We are making clear that Texas will be a tough place to cross." And lastly, New York City Mayor Eric Adams tells ABC he did the right thing when he closed a school to house illegal immigrants this week. He took the step due to extreme winter conditions, which Adams says could have been dangerous for immigrant kids.
We did the right thing, and those parents who are stated that we can't inconvene someone for one day because of other children, that's not acceptable, and I'm not going to put children in harm's way.
Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
GOP candidates' final sprint to get votes in Iowa again derailed by a winter storm, and extreme temperatures are threatening voter turnout next Monday. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has
influence the Chinese government. Why are we allowing it here? If we can't influence Chinese schools, why can they do it here? If we can't access the Chinese internet and influence their people through social media, why can they do it here? So you have to understand, why are we allowing that? Why are we allowing it as American citizens, each American citizen, and why are we allowing our lawmakers to allow it to happen? It needs to end, and the violation for that needs to be treason. There needs to be complete ban, federal law, and if you violate the federal ban and federal law, then it's treason, because we're talking about national security now.
Casey Fleming, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Taiwan is gearing up for its presidential election this Saturday. The favorite candidate is
The military carried out airstrikes against Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen on Thursday, with support from Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, and Bahrain. Pentagon Press Secretary Patrick Ryder says the strikes specifically targeted facilities that were known to have radars, missiles, and UAV capabilities.
We've conducted this significant multi-nation operation in order to send a clear message to the Houthis that the kinds of attacks that they've been conducting since November 19th, 27 as of today, will not be tolerated.
Fighter jets can be seen here, launching off into the inky blackness on a mission to punish the Iran-backed group. President Biden said he ordered the strikes as retaliation for a series of escalating attacks by the Houthi rebels on U.S. and international maritime ships in the Red Sea, a crucial commercial shipping waterway.
We reserve the right to protect and defend our forces, to defend the global trade that transits through the Red Sea.
A video released by Houthi-run Al Masirah TV allegedly shows the moment of the bombardment in Sana'a, Yemen. The dogs barking beneath a dark sky, a reminder that people are alike around the globe. They have pets, kids, and birthday parties. Attacks by the Houthi group, which began in mid-November, have impacted the international commercial shipping of more than 50 countries. They have escalated in recent days to include the direct targeting of American ships. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Australia said today.
Welcome
to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. Houthi rebels vow revenge against the U.S. and UK-led military strikes. The rebels have been attacking commercial ships in the Red Sea. Two recent avalanches, one in Idaho, another in California. Both disasters have claimed the lives of people in the area. With the new year ahead, money still remains a top issue for many people. We'll take a look at some expenses that could get cheaper. First, tensions grow in the Middle East. Iran-backed Houthi forces vow revenge against the U.S. and UK warships in the Red Sea. Here's more on this developing story. Yemen's Houthi rebels vowed on Friday fierce retaliation in response to Thursday's U.S. and UK military airstrikes. Thursday's strikes took aim at more than 60 targets in 16 different locations across Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen. The Houthis said that the attack killed at least 5 people and wounded 6. The bombardment was in response to recent Houthi-led drone and missile attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea.
They were given a final warning earlier this month. They chose to ignore it, launched a pretty massive attack on Tuesday against U.S. and coalition ships, and we responded. So they've got another choice to make. They need to know that we will stand fully prepared to defend ourselves and defend that shipping if it comes to it.
Since November 2023, Houthi rebels have repeatedly targeted ships in the Red Sea, saying they are avenging Israel's offensive in Gaza against Hamas. But the Houthis have frequently targeted vessels with no clear links to Israel, disrupting a key route for global trade and energy shipments. Since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, Houthis have shown support for Hamas terrorists. On Friday, tens of thousands of Yemenis gathered across the several cities to condemn the U.S. and British strikes. However, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is demanding the Houthis to immediately end their attacks on commercial shipping in accordance with the UN Resolution 2722.
The Secretary General stresses the need to avoid acts that could further worsen the situation in Yemen.
Crush any Taiwan independence efforts one day before its critical elections. Chinese military-linked vessels reportedly mapping the floor of the Indian Ocean. That data crucial for deploying submarines in the event of war with Taiwan. Japan planning on recruiting more female troops into its military. This as the nation continues to battle threats from China, Russia, and North Korea. And tensions mount in the South China Sea. Indonesia's president meeting with Vietnam on security in the hotly contested waters. New warnings from China a day before Taiwan's pivotal presidential race. Beijing's military vowing to crush any efforts to promote Taiwan's independence. While a defense ministry spokesperson said the Chinese military maintains high vigilance at all times. Right now, the race is tight, and countries around the world are watching. Taiwan's next president will be faced with walking a very fine line, balancing relations between the island, China, and Washington. The Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as part of China, despite never having ruled it. Washington doesn't have diplomatic ties with the island, though the U.S. is bound by law to provide Taiwan with means to defend itself, often through weapons sales. Taiwan's defense ministry said Friday that it detected 5 Chinese balloons flying over the Taiwan Strait, all within the past 24 hours. One of the aircraft crossed the island. It's the latest in a string of such balloons, the ministry says it spotted over the past month. The ministry this month accused China of threatening aviation safety and of waging psychological warfare on the island's people through the balloons right before they vote for their next president. A senior White House official is accusing Communist China of meddling in Taiwan's upcoming election. The State Department echoed that statement with the island's vote just one day away.
We've been very clear about our opposition to outside interference or malign influence in Taiwan's elections. We also have deep confidence in Taiwan's democratic process and believe it is for Taiwan voters to decide their next leader.
On the condition of anonymity, the White House official said that the Biden administration's foreign policy towards Taiwan will remain the same. That's regardless of which candidate is elected. The official also noted the White House is planning to send an unofficial delegation to Taiwan after the election. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to meet with senior Chinese regime official Liu Jianchao in Washington Friday. Liu is the head of the Chinese Communist Party's international department. He once led the regime's so-called Operation Fox Hunt. The U.S. has criticized the program as a form of transnational repression used to target Chinese dissidents. Tactics include pressuring dissidents' families in mainland China and even kidnappings. The Chinese regime considers Taiwan a red line and the most dangerous issue in U.S.-China relations. It warns that any moves toward formal independence by Taiwan would mean conflict with China. Washington has warned the Chinese Communist Party not to interfere in the island's elections and says Beijing would be considered the instigator if it chooses to respond with more military pressure. Moving now to the Indian Ocean, is China studying the waters there to grow its combat capability? A new report says Chinese research vessels are surveying the seafloor of the Indian Ocean. These fleets are tied to the Chinese military. The study said their work could help the Chinese Navy project power into the region. Data on ocean depths and current temperatures are especially useful for submarine operations during conflicts. The report comes from CSIS, a think tank based in Washington, D.C. China hit back, accusing CSIS of manufacturing a China threat narrative. The report found 13 such research vessels are linked to the Chinese military. The ships have docked at Chinese military ports and have at times turned off tracking devices. Another expert added the Indian Ocean would prove critical for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. China receives a huge amount of crude oil and gas transported through the Indian Ocean. If the energy supply there gets disrupted, then a possible war on Taiwan could grind to a halt. The growing presence of these Chinese vessels are sparking discomfort in India. Last week, its neighbor Sri Lanka refused to allow a Chinese ship to dock. India has expressed concerns that those Chinese vessels are monitoring its waters from Sri Lankan ports. China has the world's largest fleet of civilian research vessels, and they stretch across the globe. CSIS says 80% of them have displayed signs that their work is linked to the Chinese military. Staying on the Indo-Pacific, Japan is looking to recruit more women into its military ranks. That's as the nation continues to battle a plummeting birth rate and threats from China, Russia, and North Korea. In Japan's Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade, less than 2% of troops are female. The Marine unit was first established in 2018 amid escalating tensions in the East China Sea. Soldiers in the ARDB are trained to be combat ready from the sea in case of war. Over the past decade, the number of female troops in Japan's military has doubled. Now they make up just under 9% of the entire Japanese self-defense forces. Worth noting, Japan remains a key U.S. ally in the Indo-Pacific region. Washington currently operates a number of military bases there. And as China continues to up assertions over Taiwan, Tokyo fears that an invasion would bring consequences to its national security. Meanwhile, on Friday, Japan launched a reconnaissance satellite to monitor military sites in North Korea. The new optical spacecraft is capable of capturing detailed images. Japan began to build up its spy satellite network after a North Korean rocket flew over its airspace in 1988. Its end goal is to spot early signs of possible missile launches. Zooming in on South Korea, a local submarine contractor is getting its conviction overturned by a new ruling. In 2022, marine technology firm SI Innotech was found guilty for shipping submarine equipment to Taiwan without approval. But that's no longer the case this Thursday. A South Korean appeals court decided the evidence wasn't strong enough to classify that equipment as military goods, which require export approval. It appears Thursday's ruling will set a precedent for other South Korean firms involved in Taiwan's submarine program, changing the way future cases involving military technology and equipment might be handled. Indonesia and Vietnam are bolstering security ties as Beijing ramps up aggression in the South China Sea. Indonesia's president visited Vietnam for talks Friday. One key part of the conversation is about peace and stability in the hotly contested region.
Lastly, Indonesia and Vietnam have agreed to work together to maintain the region's stability and economy growth.
Over 20% of global trade passes through the South China Sea. Multiple countries claim parts of the region, but China claims almost all of it. Chinese coast guards have rammed Filipino boats and fired water cannons at them. The aggression sought to block the Filipino boats from entering disputed territories. Indonesia and Vietnam also signed deals on fisheries cooperation. Hundreds of thousands of Taiwanese packed final election rallies on Friday, fueled by their passion to support the candidate they believe is the best choice for the island's future. Curious about the faces behind the political fervor? Let's take a look.